1920 to 1933, the sale, production, and transportation of alcohol were banned in the United States by a law known as the National Prohibition Act. If the ban had only begun 1 year earlier, the city of Boston, Massachusetts might have been spared one of its worst disasters in its history. Prior to Prohibition, molasses was commonly used in the production of drinking alcohol. Like many other distilleries, the Purity Distillery Company in Boston stored molasses in large tanks. Theirs were the biggest in Boston, and on January 15, 1919, the steel tanks burst open. Out poured 2.3 million gallons of molasses with deadly force. The flood tore through Boston's North End neighborhood, taking down buildings, houses, horse-drawn wagons, and people in its path. Like lava from a volcanic eruption, the thick, heavy substance was hard to escape from. What the molasses lacked in lava-like heat, it made up for its stickiness. This made it difficult for rescue workers and firefighters attempting to free those who were trapped. Rescue efforts went on for days. When all was said and done, the deadly wave had killed 21 people and injured 150. Next came the cleanup and the fallout. If you ever baked with molasses, you know what type of consistency it has. If not, imagine a brown substance as sweet as maple syrup, but 5 times heavier and thicker. This mass of sludge literally coated the entire North End. In many homes and buildings, ground floors and basements were flooded with it. Since the disaster occurred in winter, some of the molasses simply froze into hardened masses. But on warm days, it liquefied and spread into previously unaffected areas. Major cleanup efforts lasted weeks, but residue of the molasses remained for months. So what caused this tank to burst? Many lawsuits were filed in the wake of the disaster, alleged that its construction was flawed and it was simply not strong enough to hold its full capacity. Witness accounts of the explosion seem to support this theory. There were descriptions of the tank literally tearing into pieces while rivets popped out and went airborne. There's a saying in Boston that on a hot summer day you can still smell the molasses. This is probably true in the decade following the disaster, but today the only real remnant is a memory plaque on a stone wall on Commercial Street, the busy street which was hit the hardest by the Boston Molasses disaster. For as long as humans have kept animals on displays in zoos, many of those animals have found ways to escape. In a best case scenario, it's a small bird or animal. They might see a chance to flee and take advantage of it, then seek out a place to live where the habitat most closely resembles their comfort zone. Worst case scenarios include the escape of fierce animals which pose threats to humans. It's even worse if that fierce animal is also highly intelligent and resourceful. This is an apt description of Little Joe, a gorilla who notoriously escaped Boston's Franklin Park Zoo in 2003. Little Joe was born in New York City's Bronx Zoo in 1993. He made the move to Boston in 1997 and made his getaway 6 years later. At 10 years old, Little Joe was in a phase of his life that's considered adolescence for gorillas. Like many teenagers, he was frisky and mischievous. His first runaway attempt was unsuccessful. He made it out of his enclosure undeterred by a 12-foot moat and electric fence, but he was captured before escaping zoo grounds. 6 weeks later, Little Joe escaped again, but this time for real. Again, he surpassed all protective measures, easily bypassing a moat and climbing over a fence, and this time he even smashed a glass door. He viciously attacked 2 people on the zoo grounds, causing visitors and zoo employees to dive for cover. He made a full escape, and the city of Boston lay in a state of fear while he roamed the streets and wooded areas of the surrounding neighborhood. For some of those who had not heard of Little Joe's escape, catching sight of a 300-pound gorilla on a city street was a bizarre and surreal experience. In a truth-is-stranger-than-fiction moment, the gorilla was actually spotted standing at a city bus stop for a short time. After a tense 2-hour chase, Little Joe was finally cornered by police and zoo officials in a neighborhood very close to the zoo. He did not go down easily, though. The first 4 tranquilizer darts only served to annoy him, as he simply just pulled them out. But the darts continued to fly, and eventually he was fully sedated. Meanwhile, the attack victims, a young child and her babysitter, recovered from their injuries at the nearby Boston Medical Center. Little Joe's all grown up now. He still resides at the Franklin Park Zoo, where he celebrated his 30th birthday in February of 2023.